In this session, we'll be talking about how to construct PEA paragraphs. Okay, PEA paragraphs form the building blocks of an essay, and you will need to write roughly 4 to 5 PEA paragraphs in your exam to make yourself eligible for the higher marks. So the quality of the PEA paragraph that you write will very much determine the mark that you gain at the end of your exam. Okay, so let's get started. I've just given, to really just explain what is going on, I've used a typical essay question that comes up in literature. So how does Shakespeare present attitudes towards marriage in Romeo and Juliet? So this is a question that I've seen come up time and time again, and I'm going to show you how you can utilize this structure to gain the highest marks possible. Okay, so the first part of the paragraph is the point. So a point is a direct statement answer to the question by stating your argument. Keyword being argument, right? An essay is an academic argument. Without an argument, you don't really have an essay. So if you are to just write in a very descriptive fashion, you are, at most, you can only really get about a B or a C at most. So you always want to make it clear to the examiner, explicitly clear to the examiner, what your argument is. And you can do this straight away in your point. So just a succinct and direct answer to the question given. So within my example, as an example that I've written, I've said Shakespeare presents Lady Capulet as lacking the understanding of the loving aspects of a relationship within marriage. So she doesn't understand that love is an important aspect of marriage, and we're going to explore how and why Shakespeare presents Lady Capulet to be that way in this paragraph. So that is the argument that I'm going to be presenting in this paragraph. The next part would be the evidence. So the evidence is a relevant quotation to substantiate your point. The importance of the evidence is twofold. You must pick evidence that proves your above point, and you must be able to analyse the evidence in detail. Okay, so this is quite important. You need to make sure that the evidence that you choose is considered carefully, because it's not just there to prove your point, which is what most students think. You must also be able to analyse the evidence in detail. So if you pick a piece of evidence that you're not actually able to unpack, that you're not able to do zoom in, zoom out analysis to, then it becomes difficult to really gain marks, and you won't really have anything to say about the evidence. So you've got to ensure that you pick evidence that pretty much embodies the key points, the key themes, for example, being marriage, love, family, for instance, that you can really go into detail in your analysis. So you have to pick evidence carefully, and you have to use discretion when you pick evidence. The evidence that highlights the key themes and the key points that you're going to be speaking about. In this case, I'm talking about the lack of love. So I've got to show evidence that, one, proves that Lady Capulet doesn't care about love within marriage. But it's also got to be something that I can analyse in a lot of detail, that I can unpack. So I chose that, so shall you share all that he doth possess by having him. And the reason why I've chosen this is because she uses this word, possess. She views marriage through the lens of ownership, and that's what we're going to be discussing in relation to the lack of love that she attributes to marriage. So in the analysis, and this is really the hardest part, and this takes several sessions and a lot of writing to really kind of understand how to analyse a work, analyse a piece of evidence quite well. So it should be the longest part of your paragraph, and the objective of literary analysis is to unpack the writer's point of view. What specific language or structures has the writer used to convey his or her message? How and why does the writer convey these messages? So one thing you've got to understand is that we're not looking at the characters on a surface level. The characters are not real people. The events are not real. they could be inspired by real events, but for the purpose of your essay, you're not speaking about it as though they're real people and real events. Really, they are a construction. We are interested in the construction of these characters, the construction of these events. We're not interested in them as real people. So we've got to get past the surface level of these characters and think about the way that they are constructed. How are they constructed? Why are they constructed to be that way? What is the message that the author is trying to convey through these characters? And that's what we really need to unpack in the analysis. And the analysis should be the longest part of your paragraph. So let's get into this exemplary piece of analysis that I've given. So Lady Capulet focuses on Paris's looks, his social standing and wealth. This shows that Lady Capulet sees marriage through the lens of progressing up the social ladder, which provides the woman with a more reputable status in society, as she says, making yourself no less. This would make sense for an Elizabethan audience, as wealthy families have set their daughters up with even wealthier partners to increase their own status, indicating that the upper-class Veronese only care for their image and reputation. The more intrinsic aspects of relationship, such as love and affection, remain irrelevant and unspoken about. I'm just going to undo this. So what I've done here is I've integrated my context with analysis. So what is context? Context is the social, political and economic climate at the time the play was published. And these issues really underpin and influence the writing at the time. So showing a really robust understanding of the context will really help you with your analysis and gaining those higher marks. So we're talking about a 16th century patriarchal and misogynistic society. This was the Shakespearean world that is being referred to in Romeo and Juliet. A patriarchal society is one which men dominate and women remain subservient. Women remain kind of as a sort of subordinate to men. They don't really have a place in society at all. And the only purpose of a woman was to pretty much just give birth and get married. There was nothing more that a woman could have other than that. So it was a very restrictive society, and Shakespeare wanted to challenge these ideals in Romeo and Juliet. So let's see what we can do to integrate context within our analysis. So you've got to make it very clear that you are referring to context and not kind of just use vague language such as women were less than men, for example. You want to be very specific. So what I've done is I've spoken about an Elizabethan audience. This tells the examiner that you understand exactly when the play was published and when the play was set. So at the end of the day, this is a play, it's not a prose writing. So showing understanding of the fact that this is actually written for an audience will help you gain some marks. As wealthy families have set their daughters up with even wealthier partners to increase their own status, indicating that the upper class Veronese only care for their image and reputation. So once again, being very specific with your wording, such as upper class Veronese. So we're talking about the highest, the richest people at the time, as this was a play set in Verona. So using very specific language to refer to the context will really help you gain marks here. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that short session, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.